Hey guys, welcome to part one of this two-part episode of Beyond the Struggle. I'm here today with Mr. Peter Turner and Ken Ray. We're in Ken Ray's studio. He opens the doors for us to be able to do this podcast. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
So, man, I think that, guys, we asked, first of all, these guys are here, not employees of Woodlake, not employees of treatment centers. Wanted to kind of get the different perspective on this show, on this episode of, like the client perspective, the patient perspective. We've done quite a few now where we've talked about different aspects, working at a treatment center, what that's like. Just thought it would be interesting to have the other perspective, what it's like to be a client at a treatment center.
Yeah.
So I guess, Ken, man, you want to tell us about yourself, man?
Yeah. So, it's such a full circle moment to be that I get to do Woodlake's podcast, and I went to Woodlake.
Yeah.
So
Tell
that's
me about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember having, Kevin James in here for the first. He's like, oh, you done all right. And I'm like, it's like crazy having you in my house. So a little backstory about me. I used from 13 to 32. I'm 39 now. Haven't drank in 6 years, but I've definitely struggled with other substances. I mean, I'm definitely a repeat offender. I went to Woodlake twice. Went to another treatment center that didn't open anymore. Went there once right around 2020 when COVID was beginning to happen. So that was a whole thing. But Woodlake definitely helped me pull my head out of my ass, I guess, for lack of a better term.
You hear that term while you're there. You'll hear that. Yeah, the
pop. Yeah, right. It was my head exiting my ass.
Especially if you're an old school client.
Oh. Yeah, they would make you sit in the front row. And it was always like the running joke is like, don't tell the new guy that he's got to, like, what's going to happen. And it was the entertainment for us as they would sit in the front row and they'd be like, so do you love your family? And the guy always, yes, I absolutely do. Oh, well, what do your actions show?
Yeah.
And then you would just see them just get basically the truth told to them. And I know for me, like figuring out what a problem and a solution was something I had never heard before. Yeah. Like it was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. Plus a good location. I mean, the other place I went to was kind of like a hospital, which, was not ideal for me. So, yeah, I mean, not much to tell. Once I start, I can't stop. And, I've dabbled in everything, and I definitely, I have no off button.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you fit the criteria.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So what about Peter, man? What about you? What was kind of the backstory prior to treatment for you?
Yeah, so for me, I started at a very young age. My father actually kind of introduced me to mind-altering substances at about the age of 4, and I used all the way. I mean, by the time I was in 5th grade, I was sneaking weed and pain pills in my backpack to elementary school.
We would have been friends.
Yeah.
And my daughter can't remember to bring her lunchbox, man. In this
I was smoking cigarettes, going to the bus stop, like
unzipping the Ninja Turtle backpack, man. And he's like, "Yeah, I got the pain pills in there."
Yeah, I mean, it really was, dude. It was actually Power Rangers, but
yeah, I got you.
Yeah, it was. Looking back, man, it was bizarre. As an adult, a lot of people ask me about my childhood, and I used to say, yeah, I mean, it was normal. It was fine.
That was the norm.
Yeah, it was. Like my mother had a house in Plantation Garden Homes in Denham Springs, and it's just like a nice, quiet little neighborhood where kids are running around riding their bikes and like all this stuff. And my parents divorced when I was young, and so I spent part of the time at my dad's, part of the time at my mom's. And at a young age, I realized, like, okay, I want to spend the majority of the time with my dad because I like the way all this stuff makes me feel, and he was okay with me doing it. And so, I would go over there, and I knew that I was getting off the bus at my mom's house the next day. So what I would do is at 8 years old, I'm pinching some of his stock and I'm hiding it in my book sack and I'm bringing it with me to school so I can make sure that I have it when I get off the bus the next day. And I mean, I'm talking second, third, fourth grade.
Yeah.
And so I was just hardwired and conditioned from a very young age to, it was a lot of things besides just the substance abuse. It was manipulation. It was lying. It was making sure, something my dad kind of hammered into me at that early of an age was, hey, if you like the way this makes you feel, then we can keep doing this. But you have to make sure that when you are in front of your mother, that you are the way that she expects you to be. Wow. And so it wasn't something that was, I believe, like something that I was necessarily born with, but that I was kind of conditioned to and taught to, that I can pretty much do whatever I want as long as I get good enough at getting away with it. And so if I can hide it and I can keep it under wraps and I can make sure that I am whoever I need to be in front of the right people, then I'll be able to navigate through life successfully and continue to be able to do whatever I want and get away with whatever I want.
Yeah.
And, man, I tell you, I practiced for a long time and I got pretty damn good.
Yeah.
I got pretty damn good at turning into whoever I needed to be and getting away with. But then I started bringing that mindset into an adult life with my first serious relationship, and man, that shit just does not go very far.
I didn't realize how bad I really was until I got into serious relationships, and then you would just see it just slowly dissolve and collapse.
Yeah, and that was, I guess, one of the questions when you were talking. I wanted to talk. I thought, like, man, like it made me think about that to ask you guys is like, when did I realize that my normal was not normal? Like you talked about from an early age. You talked about from an early age. I know I was from an early age. Like when was the first maybe not full realization, but like, oh, maybe this isn't normal. Do y'all kind of recollect that?
I remember in 6th grade, by the time I was in junior high, I had a full-blown pain pill addiction. I was taking 10 to 12 Loratabs a day. No questions asked.
Blue Monsters.
Well, yes, the 540s.
Yep.
And or else I would not feel well.
Yeah.
It wasn't an intense detox, but I had to have them, or my body physically would have withdrawals. And so that's 11 years old in 6th grade, and I remembering at 4 years old, my mom bringing me a cup to pee in, because she was trying to figure out what was going on and see if my dad and my older brother had actually introduced me to marijuana.
Interesting.
And I remember remembering that and being like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's no good. And then I started kind of reflecting on what I was doing presently. And it was kind of, I do remember that moment, the first time that I was able to kind of actually like, I don't know, let the reality of my situation sink in and realize, I'm looking around and I'm seeing all these other kids at school, and they're wrapped up in their baseball, their sports, their extracurricular activities, band, all this stuff. And, they're going home and they're doing normal stuff. And I'm sitting here like I've got illegal drugs in my backpack. I can't go through the day, a 6th grade day, without some sort of substance. And, that was, I do remember that pretty specifically. And it started with a further memory back of realizing, wow, that is definitely not normal. And what I'm doing now is definitely not normal either. That was kind of my separation point.
I remember, so what I want to be very clear about is that I'm going to share this story, but I'm going to keep some things out of it because I don't want people to go and do this if you're currently on. But I faked.
Don't try this at home.
Yeah, get your notepad out. So the internet was in its early kind of infancy at this point. It had not. I mean, people were still using Ask Jeeves.
Yeah.
Oh,
right? I remember that.
It's cool. Yeah.
Man.
Yes.
Kids out there don't know about. They'll know about old Jeeves.
Ezra will learn.
He will learn. Let the boy watch. So I faked a medical illness in order to get painkillers. but it was a very specific thing that couldn't be like there was no
Couldn't be verified.
there was no test that you could do. It was just based off of like but I had to go through all the paperwork and hoops to do that, and ended up, I mean, getting countless amounts of Lortabs, and I would snort 10 at a time.
Mhm.
That's a lot of powder.
And how old were you at this point?
16, 17.
Yeah.
And that's like your first, like you remember doing that and being like, this can't be.
My friends were not doing it.
Yeah,
Like,
I got you.
Like, you know, somebody would break their leg, and I'd be like, "Yeah, you get any pink?"
Oh man, I'm sorry.
Oh, you know, my neck's been hurting me, bro. You ain't got one of those, and then they do.
cash. Just say,
Oh, when I was a chef, I lived in Florida, and the bus, like the shuttle driver to and from the restaurant, only had one leg, and he had a peg leg. And I was like, "Dang, dude, you must be in a lot of pain for that." He's like, "Yeah, they give me Norco 10s, this, that, and the other." And I was like, "How many do they give you a month?" He was like,
what do you?
300. I was like, "What would that be to get those from me?" He was like, "Oh, you know," and I was like, "Well, what if I gave you $1,000?" You know?
Yeah.
Sure, that sounds good. So you can imagine I'm eating like 5, 6, 7 at a time. Like,
yeah.
that was not normal.
Yeah.
Like, that was not, and I just thought I was really crafty. Like, and that dude knew what was up.
Mhm.
Like, that's not okay. And I'm not condoning that. I'm not, you know, because I don't want this podcast to be called War Stories. Like,
Yeah, no,
that's
absolutely.
not what we're here to do.
And
so.
I think that's like that, you know, it's just, but like trying to figure out, because the next question, well, I was going to share mine. I remember being like, it was my freshman year of college, and one of my older cousins, like, you know, I don't know if y'all had a lot of cousins growing up, but, you know, they were the first kind of one to do all the stuff that, like, you know, whether it's like marriage or kids, but they were the oldest out of all the cousins, right? So the oldest cousin is getting married. One of the oldest cousins getting married. I'm in college. I'm already late for this wedding that my entire family's going to be at.
Mm.
I remember, you know, I've got the tie, the whatever, probably the blue blazer with the gold buttons, you know, whatever it was.
Oh boy.
You know, yeah. And I'm going to get in my vehicle, running late for this wedding already. And I remember stopping, turning around, going back into my apartment to use, knowing that I'm going to be that much more late, showing up with all of the family under the influence now. And I remember driving, thinking to myself, I don't know if this is normal. You know, I don't know if, like, are most people gonna be more late to an event where all their family's at and show up intoxicated then? Like,
Can somebody actually just show up just with nothing?
What was
Just
the
something like that.
So for y'all, what was the first time like you realized like you couldn't stop? Like, was there a moment that you were like, "Oh gosh, I can't stop"? Like,
I do.
what was that?
So I was 12 years old, and I had gotten looped in with a couple of friends of mine who I'd kind of seeked out, that I found that were kind of on the same level as I was. And there was this guy, his parents did not care about anything. There were no rules. My mom didn't like me going over there, but I would just go over there anyway or whatever. And he had this old car. We called it the Hoopty. And, I mean, it was just as illegal as you can possibly have a vehicle. I mean, this thing was, the bumper was hanging and scraping the asphalt, and no tags, no insurance,
I was thinking
no
like
registration.
24s on
No,
it. Like,
no. I mean, it just barely ran. But this guy's dad was a mechanic, and he knew how to work on cars. So he basically just kind of like duct taped everything together and kept it running. So we had access to a vehicle too. And so I'm in, I think, 7th grade at the time. I'm about 12 years old, and we are completely wasted. It's me and 2 of my buddies, and it's about 2:00 in the morning, and we decide that we want to try to go get some more alcohol. And so we go to Walmart. It's 2:00 in the morning. This guy shoves a 5th of Jack Daniels down his shorts, and we start walking out, and the cop up there stops me, asks me who I'm with, yada yada. I try and lie. Long story short, we all get arrested. And so they take me down. I mean, I think they put me in handcuffs. I can't quite remember, but I didn't like actually go to jail. I mean, I'm 12 years old or whatever. I got banned from Walmart for life, and, you know, all this stuff. And so I end up on probation. in juvenile probation or whatever, and I'm 12 years old. And part of the stipulation is, so I'm on probation for 6 months, 9 months, or whatever. It's nothing extensive, but I have to take drug tests, and I didn't stop.
Yeah, you couldn't stop for the drug test.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't. And so I end up failing 2 of them. And, you know, the parish that I live in, I think they mainly care about the money, the fines and stuff that I had to pay. And they still ended up letting me off early.
As long as you pay for it, man, that's
right.
fine. Like,
so I paid. And so, like, later on when I ended up getting off, that's kind of when I realized, like, that was the first real severe consequence that I ever felt. And a very strict stipulation of that was like, hey, you either pass these drug tests or you're going to end up going to a juvenile detention center. And it just wasn't like, that was kind of my first realization, was like, even the severity of the circumstances that I was under and the consequences that I was potentially going to face, I still could not stop. And I tried. I remember trying. Being like, you can't do this. You can't do this. You have to have this test. You have to take it. You have to pass it. You have to get off this probation. And then you can do whatever you want. After you get off paper and you get cleared of all this stuff, then you can go back to living the way that you want to live. But you got to tighten up for now.
Yeah.
And I just didn't.
Man,
I couldn't.
That, you know, I remember living with my parents in Hammond, and I had to go meet the dope man. And of course, he's like, I'm 10 minutes down the road, and you wait 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right. It was one of those things where I stole my mom's credit card and then stole her car to go and meet him. And I remember missionary crawling to her room to get into her purse, you know, while she was taking a nap. Take the purse or the credit card, and then I'm driving to the dope man's house, and I'm like crying, and I'm like, why am I doing this? And I knew I shouldn't be doing that. I couldn't stop. It wasn't enough to stop me, and of course, obviously got caught because like they see an ATM withdrawal for $300, and they're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And they're like, why are you doing this to us? Like, have we not loved you, or this, that, and the other? And the simple answer was, I don't know. And this was before I ever went to treatment. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Like, if I knew, I wouldn't do it. And it's like, well, just stop. And it's like, don't you think if I would, I could? Like, if I could, I would.
Yeah.
Like,
Why didn't I think of that?
Why did I think of that?
Yeah.
Like, that's a great idea. I should just stop. Like, but that was a moment where I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I knew that. And then I remember going to Woodlake and hearing that for the first time of why I couldn't stop.
It made so much sense.
Oh, dude, it made so much sense to me.
See, and I think my story is a little bit different. Like, they mess with me all the time, and I certainly understand I should get messed with about how many times I've been to treatment. Because when the understanding of I couldn't stop, like, as soon as I understood that, I started going to treatment. But like all of my stories about like the legals and the parents and the this and the that, like all of that didn't really start until after my treatment journey began.
Right.
You know, and so it was like, that's why I had so many visits, was I was already 4 or 5 in by the time like actual consequences had started.
Right.
You know, it was like I was just trying to, I always tell people I didn't want to do it anymore because I knew it was a problem. Very simply, like you said, Ken, was like, I can't stop this, but there hadn't been a lot of consequences yet.
Right.
It was like I was trying to, I guess, maybe hope that I could stop the consequences, you know. But man, I'm gonna tell you that, you know, and I think that's something that we can kind of talk about a little bit, is that man, I was a lot of treatment centers in before I was introduced to the idea of what addiction really is.
Right.
You know, I remember the second center I went to, our education, which was 5 days a week, which was like a part of a clinical whatever, was they turned on intervention. And we sat in a room and watched episodes of Intervention.
Nice.
And that was going to be like, this is education for
Well,
y'all.
I'm sitting there judging the whole time, by the way, and I'm like, what an amateur.
Yeah.
What an amateur.
But it was just like, I still remember that. And then, but it was just like so much later on that I was introduced to like, what is addiction? Like, here's how it's broken down. Here's a
so much
problem.
deeper.
Here's what I do. You know, like when they say, you know, we can joke about this, but like, you ever been told drugs aren't your problem?
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure if drugs
it
went away,
doesn't
I'd
make
be a whole lot better off.
It doesn't. And then it's like, you start looking at it and thinking like, oh, okay, so I can't just take the substances away,
Mm-hmm.
and so, I unfortunately, I was kind of into the old treatment center routine before I even got introduced to that. And so I guess let's talk about that. Like, what was that like when I got introduced to like what addiction really is?
Yeah.
What it is, and maybe what it isn't also. It's like addiction's not always the homeless guy under the bridge. Like me and Jeff talked about the nice bridges in Austin, right? Like,
Right.
Jeff says the nicest
the
bridges
stars
are.
are.
I was a
in
functioning
Austin.
I was a functioning addict and alcoholic for sure. Like I could maintain a job, I could work 40, 60, 70, 80, 90 hours cuz like if there's some meth in there, you'll do not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like and I was maintaining. It was when it became the delusion that I was maintaining. Right? Like it became this idea that like I was maintaining, but everyone around me was like, bro, you are a mess.
Yeah.
But like in my mind, I'm controlling this, because I hadn't been living under a bridge. I hadn't lost everything. I still had a house. I still had a girlfriend. I still had all this stuff. And in my mind, that was like the definition of success. But like I had nothing to show for it. I had no real friends. I had no connection with God. I had no relationship with my family.
Yeah.
And I remember going to treatment for the first time and thinking, oh, problem and solution. Like, oh, okay, once I start, I can't stop. And, physicality coupled with a mental obsession, that makes a lot of sense. And then getting out, I'm like, okay, cool. So, like, I just don't need to put the first one in. Okay.
Yeah.
But that goes back to the just don't do it.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's
just
like,
stop.
right. And then once I get out there and I'm left to my own devices and I'm not doing the things that are necessary for me to stay sober, I'm going to put one. I'm going to put something in me to make me feel different because I'm not okay with who I am. Like, because something was missing and it was God. Like, but I didn't even know any of that. Like, and then I remember going back to treatment for the second time and I waited for, could they, they didn't have any beds available and there were plenty of other places I could have gone to. And I was like, Woodlake was the only place I ever came close to figuring out what this was. And I was like, I'm willing to really listen this time. And I remember coming in for the second time and this guy going, Ken, you still out there bullshitting people? And I was like, yes, sir. Yes, sir, I am. I'm going to sit right here in the front. I'm not going to say anything. Then I sat and shut up and really digested all of that. And I'm thankful that I did, so.
Yeah. So I had hit a string of low spots. By the time
that's if I haven't ever heard of a politically correct way of a string of low spots. I'm gonna put that one in the old memory bank. Man.
We're definitely clipping that one.
By the time I think I was about 19 years old at this point, and
look, man, I'm sorry. All of Peter's are like 20 years. Peter's
I remember being.
I remember
13.
being 12,
I was
and
6 years old.
I'm homeless, and
so I was homeless at this point.
That's
just
the
so
perfect
you know.
guess. I don't even know why I'm here. Like,
me either.
So
it's your show now.
So yeah, I had man, I mean, I had some really good opportunities in my lap that I had completely screwed up, and all my stuff had gotten stolen. Man, I was renting my car out at the time. It was just a really bad situation. I ended up homeless, and I don't remember exactly how it happened, but my mom had helped me get into treatment for the first time, and it was in Marksville, and that was the first time that I had ever met Kevin James. It was way back in 2011 when he was still smoking Marlboro Reds on the porch out there.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my first introduction to the treatment center, the 12-step recovery programs, all that kind of stuff. And one thing I've found in my experience with treatment centers, which I've been to quite a few, I've been 11 separate occasions to, I think, 6 or 7 different facilities, all with different types of quote unquote programs or different ways to kind of attack the problem or give some sort of way to live or, so whatever. Like there's an issue, so let's try and figure out how to better live your life. So my first experience there was, I think I was still very conditioned to what I spoke about a little while ago, where it's like, okay, wherever I am, I'm going to turn into whatever it is this person expects me to be.
The chameleon effect.
That's right. And so, when I got in there, I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to try my best to be a star student. Whatever the outlined tasks for the day are, I'm going to do that and more, and I'm going to do it in a timely fashion. So if we had homework, I would make sure I would go back and do that. But then plus, I would study for an extra hour because there's absolutely nothing else to do in your free time. Or, when we're in class, then I'm going to make sure and pay attention, and I'm going to take notes, which this is back when Kevin was not big on taking notes. And so like I would listen intently, and I would share in meetings, and I would do, like, I did all the things, and I checked all the boxes that I thought needed to be checked in order for me to be successful. Because at this point, I think I was pretty tired of my circumstances, and I wanted something to change in my life. But I wasn't quite to the point where I just didn't understand exactly what that meant and the work that it was going to take. Because, dude, I'm not even 20 years old at this point.
Yeah.
I think a part of my mind still had me convinced that at some point I would, like, grow out of it in some sort of way. That, like, I would get to a point where I saw other people and they had successful lives, they had families, they had kids, they had careers, they had all these things that I felt like maybe they were like me at one point, and then they got all this stuff, and it kind of whipped them into shape, and it gave them some sort of purpose to get up in the morning and to be on the straight and narrow, and to be present in their lives. And I was just hoping that, I'd maybe stumble across something like that and be successful. And man, was I wrong.
Guys, thanks for tuning in to part 1 of Beyond the Struggle with Peter and Ken. Make sure to like, follow, share, do all that good stuff, and join us next week for the second part of this 2-part podcast.